After an officer was gunned down at point-blank range, a psychotic killer led investigators across the Midwest. No one knew where the gunman would strike next, even as his tally of murders and abductions grew. The FBI and state police raced against time to rescue America's heartland from this deranged gunman.
A small town without any crime was turned inside out by the arrival of one dangerous stranger. Some killers are cold and calculating. Others are impulsive, unpredictable, and hard to pin down. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. To flush out this killer required a SWAT team and a profiler who determined he would not surrender without a fight.
At 8 a.m. on Monday morning, September 22nd, 1986, a U.S. parole officer made his way to the home of a parolee in a lower middle-class neighborhood on the outskirts of Indianapolis, Indiana. It was a routine visit scheduled a week earlier. U.S. probation officer Thomas Gall needed to get a urine sample from an ex-convict to check for illicit drugs. "40-year-old Michael Wayne Jackson had been released from federal prison 5 months earlier on weapons charges. He also had a history of substance abuse and severe paranoid schizophrenia. The parolee was reluctant to allow Gall to enter, but the officer insisted.
No!
Moments later, a neighbor heard shouting coming from Jackson's house. He saw the officer run out the door. Jackson followed him, firing a sawed-off shotgun into his back. The final shot was at point-blank range. The neighbor called police as he watched to see what Jackson might do next. He told the 911 operator that the ex-convict re-emerged, still carrying the shotgun. But now he was wearing a dark trench coat and heading for his green pickup truck. Indianapolis police raced to the killer's home, hoping to catch him before he got far. The neighbor added that Jackson also had on canvas sneakers and jeans as he watched Jackson leave the neighborhood. Jackson escaped before police could arrive. The police called in the FBI since the probation officer was a federal official. "39-year-old Thomas Gall had been killed instantly from the shot to his head." FBI Special Agent Jack Osborne of the Indianapolis field office was assigned the case.
When I arrived at the Jackson residence, the victim was still at that scene. We had dispatched numerous agents and numerous police were in the area. We were in the process of identifying any witness we had so that they could be spoken to by the police department and also by an agent.
The eyewitness who had called 911 described Jackson's behavior as having become increasingly erratic.
At what time did you see the offense?
The neighbor said he had seen Jackson outside more than once, talking to himself in a loud and agitated manner. Agents called the parole office to learn more about Jackson's background.
While he was in prison, The previous year, he had been diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenic with antisocial personality and was to check in through the Indianapolis mental health facility and receive monthly medication for that illness, and they were afraid that he was not taking his medication.
Evidence technicians marked the positions of 3 12-gauge shotgun shells found close to the parole officer's body. Thomas Gall had been shot 3 times, the last one proving fatal. On the job for 11 years, the Vietnam veteran was the first federal parole officer killed in the line of duty. Thomas Gall left a young family and many friends.
I knew Tom pretty well. I knew his family, knew of his wife, knew that he had 2 kids, knew that he had been in the Marine Corps, had spent a year in Vietnam. We had talked about that a little bit. He was an extremely likable person, was extremely knowledgeable and caring, and it was hard working the case and keeping distance because of that closeness.
The inside of Jackson's house was described by officers as unfit for human habitation. Amongst the refuse, searchers discovered the shirt spattered with blood that Jackson wore at the time of the shooting and had since stripped off. Trash and animal droppings were scattered everywhere. There was no electricity or running water. On a counter in the kitchen, investigators found a hacksaw. They also discovered a sawed-off stock and barrel of a shotgun, likely from the murder weapon Jackson was presumably still carrying. As investigators were processing the house, an alert came across the police radio.
All right, we're on our way.
5 miles away, witnesses had reported another homicide. Just 20 minutes after the parole officer was shot, a second man had been killed at a convenience store by a shotgun blast, and a third man had been abducted. Agents interviewed a witness who described the shooter as having bushy hair, a beard, and wearing a dark trench coat. The woman added that the killer was wearing a bizarre disguise.
Witnesses at the JB Market indicate as a subject enters that market, he's carrying a shotgun, but he's got something on his face. The witnesses believe that it's grease and probably some spray paint that is in his hair and his beard, which really was a strange look.
Agents were convinced it was Jackson. The witness described that at 8:20 a.m., the armed man with a silver face burst inside demanding money.
Don't anybody move! You! Get the hell out! You! Get back! You! Get behind there! Get the money out! Get the money! Come on, hurry up!
Panicked, the owner struggled to open the register, but the gunman couldn't wait.
Hey, fat boy, get out of here!
Not wanting to leave empty-handed, the killer forced a bread delivery man to drive him from the scene in his bread truck. The witness didn't see which direction the bread truck was headed. Investigators revised the APB for Jackson to include the bread truck. Evidence technicians found a 12-gauge shell casing near the cash register, the same gauge and make as those found at the first murder scene. Buckshot from the victim was later removed to compare to samples removed from the probation officer. Detectives examined the pickup truck Jackson left behind. Inside, they found grease and a can of silver spray paint that was likely the source of Jackson's makeshift disguise.
We find that spray paint can in Jackson's truck, We're not sure why he sprays his face before he goes into the market after he had left his residence. We're surmising that he's trying to hide his identity, and he's doing that in this bizarre manner.
20 minutes later, agents received a call from the bread truck driver. Jackson had released him at the airport, unharmed. But the man told investigators the fugitive was still armed and on the move.
Jackson has taken another vehicle from the airport, again at gunpoint, and he drove up through the Speedway, Indiana area, had failed to pay for $10.50 worth of gas at a Speedway Sunoco station, and he was in a vehicle that is described to us, and there was a female in that vehicle.
Like the bread man, the woman was released shortly afterwards and called 911. But a second woman was not so lucky. At about 9 a.m., a young mother had returned to her suburban Indianapolis home following a shopping trip. As she unpacked her bags in the driveway, Michael Wayne Jackson emerged from a red pickup stolen at the airport.
Hey! Get over! Get over! Get in the car! Get in the car! Get!
She was Jackson's third hostage in less than an hour. Jackson held her captive for over 60 minutes, driving with a shotgun in his lap. She begged him to let her go, but he refused.
Shut your face!
There was no reasoning with the crazed fugitive.
She asked him about the disguise on his face, why his face was smeared with grease and oil and had paint on it, and he had no explanation for her, but did tell her that if she didn't comply with what he was telling her to do, that he would kill her.
The woman realized she had few options. When the car slowed, she jumped out. Jackson drove over her ankle, but she managed to roll free before she was injured further. The mother of one was treated at a local hospital for a broken ankle, where she reported the incident. She had escaped her kidnapper in Frankfort, Indiana, 40 miles northwest of Indianapolis. Once again, agents revised their APB. It now included her sedan, last seen traveling north from Frankfurt. Investigators struggled to predict Jackson's next move. They frantically gathered background information, trying to gain an edge.
Mike Jackson had a very extensive criminal background. In 1985 in Indianapolis, he was arrested and charged federally where he had homemade bomb devices in his vehicle and a homemade shotgun. For that, he received 1 year sentence in federal prison, and he was on 3 years parole for that violation during this time.
Jackson had also been in and out of mental institutions much of his life.
With some different looks.
Over the strong objections of his family, psychiatrists had recently released him from a treatment center since his schizophrenia had been stabilized by medication. But without supervision, Jackson had probably stopped taking his prescriptions.
Now, this was not really a picture.
And after 2 killings and 3 abductions in less than 2 hours, no one knew where Jackson was now.
We were in the process of sorting this out, as well as trying to notify all local state emergency people in the state of Indiana, as well as notifying other jurisdictions to help us try to locate Jackson. We knew what vehicle he last possessed in Frankfort, Indiana, and we hoped he was still in that vehicle and was not going to cause anyone else any harm anytime soon.
But authorities would be too late. At 10:15 a.m., Jackson decided he needed to change cars again. He barged into the Frankfort, Indiana home of a mother and child.
Don't move, kid! Get up!
Jackson ordered the woman to get her car keys or he would kill her and her son.
Get your purse. Get up, get up. Give me those keys.
She complied.
Give me those keys. Get, move. Move. Get your kid in the car.
In less than 2
Hurry
hours,
up!
Jackson had kidnapped his fourth and fifth victims.
Get in that car. Go, move.
The killer was becoming bolder and more aggressive. Agents had to somehow find a way to catch him before his latest victims wound up dead.
Get out of here.
By 10:30 a.m. on September 22nd, 1986, 40-year-old Michael Wayne Jackson had murdered his parole officer and a grocery store clerk, then carjacked 5 other people, all in less than 2.5 hours. The FBI and Indiana police believed the killer was traveling north from Indianapolis, but his exact whereabouts and destination remained unknown.
Now, hurry up.
Armed with a sawed-off shotgun and his face painted silver,
Move.
investigators believe Jackson was suffering from a psychotic episode after failing to take his medication.
Let's stay at work.
The fugitive was last seen in Frankfort, Indiana, where he had abducted a mother and child from their home.
Get out of the car.
No one knew what he might do next.
Get out of the car. Get over here. Get over here.
Jackson drove his latest victims to a desolate area 8 miles from their home.
Give me that ring.
He stole the woman's wedding rings, then ordered them to the side of the road.
Move it. Move it. Move it. Don't you go anywhere.
Though the woman and her child survived unharmed, it was 20 minutes to the nearest phone before she could report the killer's last known whereabouts. At the FBI office in Indianapolis, 3 hours after Jackson's crime spree had begun, Special Agent Jack Osborne issued a federal murder warrant for the fugitive. But with so little information on his exact location, it would be difficult to prevent Jackson from striking again.
Up northwest of Indianapolis at Frankfort. So that's our last spot. So we now had Jackson leaving or driving away from the Frankfort, Indiana area, but really had no idea where he was headed, how he was going to get there, what route he was going to take, or if he might grab somebody else in the next few hours. So this is our 5th location.
Since Jackson's pattern of travel and crime was so random, agents expanded the search and alerted all FBI field offices in a 750-mile radius, which included Cleveland, Chicago, and St. Louis.
Let all of our offices know if we can get something out statewide, too, to all law enforcement agencies, particularly along Interstate 65 maybe now.
They also contacted the fugitive's mother in Jackson, Mississippi, but she had no idea where her son might be headed.
Frankfort area.
Investigators kept the media informed, too. By noon, Michael Wayne Jackson's photo was on every news program in the Indianapolis area. 6 hours later, the fugitive surfaced close to St. Louis. He had traveled 300 miles southwest to nearby O'Fallon, Missouri. Local officers received reports from 2 residents who had been carjacked by a silver-faced man with a shotgun. A description of their car with Missouri plates was added to the list of stolen vehicles as Jackson's most recent.
It's about a 5-hour drive from Indianapolis to St. Louis. So in the early evening of Monday, the 22nd of September, local and state law enforcement in Missouri, after they had received our APBs, are notifying the police department and our office that they believed Jackson to be in that area because he had attempted a kidnapping and a vehicle theft of a couple different people in that area.
On a rural road later that afternoon, a third O'Fallon resident was on his way home from work when he spotted his wife's car with the suspect at the wheel. The man was unaware that Jackson had killed 2 others that same day. The silver-faced man with bushy hair and a beard refused to stop. As the cars approached an intersection, the killer drew his weapon. At 7 p.m. that evening, the man reported that the shooter only hit the front of his car. He'd returned home after the shooting to discover that his wife and father-in-law had been assaulted by the fugitive, but not seriously injured. Authorities now added the stolen blue sedan and its license plate to the APB for Jackson. It was the 7th vehicle carjacked in less than 12 hours.
We were glad to hear, I think, that we knew where he was. We were glad to hear that he hadn't harmed anyone else, and that we knew now that he had a different vehicle, and that the St. Louis authorities, both federal, local, and state, were in the process of trying to get him located and stopped without getting anyone else hurt.
Yet despite the all-points bulletin, Jackson was nowhere to be found. Missouri State Highway Patrol officers responded to an accident near I-70 in O'Fallon, close to where the fugitive was last seen. A car had careened into a tree. The driver was pronounced dead at the scene. Given the darkness of the night, officers could not determine the extent of the man's injuries. Suspicious of the circumstances, the man's family ordered an autopsy. The medical examiner determined that the man had been shot in the head at close range through the driver's window with a 12-gauge shotgun, the same type of weapon Jackson had used to kill his parole officer and a grocery store owner. Examiners sent the buckshot to the Indiana State Police lab so it could be compared to the others. It would take several days to learn the results. Area patrols stepped up surveillance in search of the armed fugitive. "10 miles away at around 7:30 p.m., a dark sedan with Texas plates pulled into a Wentzville, Missouri gas station. Jackson had carjacked his 8th vehicle and took its driver hostage. The attendant was unaware of the manhunt and didn't know what to make of the man with the silver face.
$10, please.
When the fugitive paid for the gas, the attendant noticed a shotgun in his lap and blood on his hands.
Thank you.
He immediately notified authorities, who once again changed the APB for Jackson. It now included the sedan with Texas plates. State and local officers rushed to the Wentzville area near Interstate 70. They needed to find the spree killer before he struck again. On September 22, 1986, the FBI continued to hunt for fugitive Michael Wayne Jackson, wanted for murdering 3 and carjacking 11 others in less than 12 hours. The silver-faced Jackson was last spotted at a Missouri gas station, armed with a sawed-off shotgun, driving a stolen dark sedan with Texas plates.
Thank you.
The passenger was the car's owner and was Jackson's latest hostage. It was impossible for authorities to know where Jackson might be headed, since his behavior had been so erratic after he stopped taking his antipsychotic medication. Wright City, Missouri police canvassed the interstate and local roads. At 9:15 p.m., Jackson was spotted alone in the stolen sedan by the town's police chief and his sergeant. Jackson seemed uncertain of what to do next. The chief radioed for reinforcements. They did not arrive in time. The sergeant was struck in the head. Jackson was long gone.
Yes, you all right? Sure.
The sergeant's injury was minor, so the chief gave chase, leaving him with a concerned witness. But the chief never caught up with the fugitive. 5 miles away, a pair of Missouri State Highway Patrol officers sighted the stolen sedan, abandoned on an interstate median. No one was inside, but the keys were still there. Officers then heard banging from within the trunk.
Cover me. Watch out.
They prepared for the worst.
Cover me there. Bill! Take it easy. Right there. Stay still. All right. Take it easy now.
They found only the terrified owner, traumatized but unhurt.
Turn around.
His identification had been stolen, so police checked to be sure he was unarmed.
My ID.
He described his silver-faced kidnapper, armed with a sawed-off
Put in
shotgun.
the trunk.
He had no idea where the man had fled, but it appeared he had taken his gun since police did not find it in the car.
I don't know that.
The FBI and local police fanned out, not knowing which direction the fugitive had run, or if he had already carjacked his next victim. Despite hours of searching, they turned up no sign of the gunman, according to Special Agent in charge of the FBI in St. Louis, Hal Helteroff.
The night that Michael Wayne Jackson had abandoned his vehicle, we had the two sweeps on the south side of the interstate and the north side of the interstate the next morning. We were unable to flush him out of there. Then I determined that this was going to be a longer manhunt than I had expected. And at that point, I ordered in more FBI agents.
State and federal agents examined Jackson's last stolen vehicle. They noted the driver's side door had been pierced during the shootout with police. Since they did not find the slug, it appeared likely that Jackson had been hit in the ribs. The fact that Jackson fled the vehicle moments later could account for the lack of blood on the seat.
One theory was that he was injured and maybe went south of the interstate and laid down somewhere and either couldn't get up due to being injured or died.
A central command post was established in Wright City to coordinate the search efforts.
The vehicle that was taken there was recovered in O'Fallon, Missouri.
The area around the interstate encompassed thousands of acres of farmland and woods.
O'Fallon.
Do you have a description on that car?
To contain it would require hundreds of personnel, vehicles, and 24-hour roadblocks.
What you're going to try to do
For Missouri State Patrol Sergeant Don Bizzelli, no one would be safe until Jackson was found.
you all have roadblocks? Okay.
Information that we obtained from the Bureau about the background on Jackson made us more concerned for the safety of the citizens in Wright City and for the safety of our officers. He hadn't hesitated to shoot before, and he had already killed a law enforcement officer, the probation officer, and there was nothing to let us to believe that he'd stop.
Great, have some information you'll need on that.
Authorities established a perimeter around Wright City, extending 5 miles in every direction. Residents in the town of 1200 awoke to find their community saturated with law enforcement, searching for an armed and unstable killer. With a homicide rate of 0 and little criminal activity of any kind, citizens were frightened. They were forced to lock their doors for the first time, and many kept their children home from school.
We had to start alerting the community that we had a suspect in the area that was very dangerous, and asked the people to keep us informed if they saw anybody matching Jackson's description. And it didn't take long for the word to get around, of course, in that small community, because our greatest fear was that he would take someone hostage.
The sprawling countryside was divided into mile-wide sectors. Search teams consisted of bloodhounds, SWAT members, FBI agents, and state police. Photos were distributed to searchers, and samples of Jackson's clothing were provided to the dogs to learn the killer's scent. Hundreds of occupied and abandoned buildings dotted the landscape. All would have to be searched. Over the next several days, many locations were explored more than once. It was a tedious and time-consuming process. Bloodhounds, known for their large jowls and long ears which stir minute scents towards their perceptive noses, found few signs of Jackson. At one building, searchers came across an abandoned campsite. But it appeared the cookware and old raincoat had been left behind by an itinerant laborer during the harvest season. Despite a week of searching, the teams found no evidence of Jackson's whereabouts.
We tried not to get frustrated. We tried to keep the morale up, saying today's the day, we're going to find him. It's the type of case that your troops are out there and they expect any minute that they're going to get a sighting on him, so that in itself just keeps you going.
Media did their part to keep the public informed. While the FBI and State Highway Patrol maintained 24-hour checkpoints on the 27 miles of roadways into and out of the Wright City area, they stopped each car that came through. One of the men they stopped claimed to be the fugitive's nephew. He said he had heard about the search and he wanted to help. He told them his uncle could survive on his own in the woods, and that it was possible that Jackson could be wearing body armor since he owned some. This might explain how Jackson survived a policeman's bullet that had likely hit his ribs.
We determined that from the use of dogs, we had tracking dogs and we had cadaver dogs come in, that we could not come up with a dead body. Therefore, I was leaning toward the fact that he was still alive and well.
Area farmers tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy, though remaining vigilant. A week into the manhunt, one woman spotted the bearded fugitive in his dark trench coat carrying a shotgun. She called police immediately, but the man disappeared before authorities arrived. 7 days after Michael Wayne Jackson had fled his Indiana home, the spree killer was still on the loose. The FBI knew that they had to find him before he found another victim. By September 28, 1986, a week had passed in the hunt for armed fugitive Michael Wayne Jackson, wanted for multiple murders, carjackings, and the wounding of a police officer. The 41-year-old criminal was last seen armed and on foot in the rural area of Wright City, Missouri. Despite a massive search, the FBI and local investigators had found no signs of the killer's whereabouts. The FBI considered the possibility that Jackson had stolen another car and somehow escaped the area. Desperate, they turned to FBI senior investigative profiler Ron Walker for help.
What they were simply asking for was my estimate, my prediction, I guess, of what he was going to do, what his continued acts were going to be, and where he was likely to go. And really more importantly for them at this period of time was, is he still in the area that they had been searching for 7 days?
Agent Walker analyzed Jackson's criminal and psychological history, as well as the reports from his current rampage. Since there were no new crimes recorded in the past week, the profiler concluded that Jackson had not yet left Wright City, Missouri.
Well, my opinion was that he was there, that he had probably become disoriented because of his paranoid kind of beliefs, his fear of being captured. He would avoid contact with people unless it would be to gain access to a vehicle to get out. And for that reason, I told him it was very important to maintain a very high profile, a high level of obvious police activity, because you don't want him to have the opportunity to think that he can get a way out by carjacking someone and getting a car and driving out of the area.
Since the fugitive was likely still in the area, the FBI called on the experience of tracker Bob Swabe from the Knoxville, Tennessee FBI field office. Swabe is best known for finding Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassin, James Earl Ray, after Ray's escape from a Tennessee prison in 1976. Agents hoped the renowned tracker could locate Jackson based on the minute signs he was trained to read.
Very seldom will you find a good footprint. You've got to learn to interpret the disturbance that's on the ground, and the little unusual thing like a leaf that is turned over or a stick that is just a small limb that has been stepped on and crushed or broken.
From decades of experience, Swabe can discern the difference between animal and human tracks through the depth of their imprint, the height at which branches or grass are disturbed around them, and their surface temperature. While animals often leave traces of their body heat after resting, humans' body heat is mostly absorbed by their clothing or shoes, preventing their heat from escaping. But since the hunt for Jackson had been so extensive, picking up his trail presented some unique challenges, even for the experienced tracker.
There had been so many people in there prior to us arriving on the scene. I mean, you know, that had I guess probably 200 or 300 police officers, law enforcement officers in this whole area searching before we ever arrived on the scene. So it made it more difficult.
Then, on September 29, 1986, a Wright City resident confirmed what the profiler had suspected. He reported that his guest house had been broken into. Nothing had been stolen, but he did find a broken mirror, used disposable razors, and an open can of soup. From the bathroom sink, evidence technicians recovered shaved hair, flecked with silver paint. It appeared that Jackson had once again changed his appearance. After 9 days of searching, agents feared Jackson may have slipped past patrols with his new appearance. Special Agent Jack Osborne took steps to alert the public at large.
Jackson was added to the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list on October 1st, so we could get some national exposure. Manhunt in St. Louis and the Wright City area had continued for numerous days. There were sightings, but we still didn't know for sure where he was, and we thought that added publicity with him being such a dangerous person is what would help get him located if he had left that St. Louis, Wright City area.
On October 2nd, investigators returned to a building they had searched a week earlier. Camping gear that searchers had previously noticed was still there, but one item was now missing: a blue raincoat. They wondered if it was Jackson's and whether he had returned to claim it now that the nights were getting colder.
I felt that he was probably going to look for some abandoned outbuilding to hide in, just get out of the weather. You're dealing with a guy here who's been on the run, no food or water that we know of to speak of, high strength of emotional and psychological anxiety and arousal. Physically, he would have been very, very debilitated, and mentally as well.
As the team approached a nearby barn they had searched before, a tracker noticed a muddy sneaker print leading inside. Jackson was last seen wearing sneakers. Searchers were not sure how old the print was, or even if it was Jackson's.
Got a feeling.
We knew that there had been SWAT teams there, and we didn't know really for sure whether that was his track or one of our own tracks. Part of the mud had dried up a little bit, part of it was still wet, indicating that it was probably maybe 8 hours old.
A single gunshot rang out from the hayloft. One team member escaped unharmed, but another was trapped below.
When the shotgun went off above my head, of course there was buckshot flying all over that barn. I don't think any of us got hit by it, but I looked to my left and I saw one of the trackers jump into a stable.
Without knowing the gunman's exact location, he couldn't make his way to the door without exposing himself as a target.
Yeah.
Since the tracker had no radio, searchers spoke to him through the walls.
Okay, good.
He confirmed he had not been hit and described the interior layout so the team could plan a rescue. There was no way out except through the front door.
I saw the outcome in the Jackson case as being a violent one. I saw this going to either a barricade situation with a shootout where he is ultimately killed by the police, possibly a suicide by police where he forces the police to shoot him. I felt completely confident that there would not be a peaceful resolution to this.
The tracker waited for help, trapped inside the barn, with an armed and demented gunman perched above him. On October 2nd, 1986, the FBI and Missouri State Police surrounded a barn in Wright City where a tracker was trapped by a gunman in the hayloft, believed to be murderer Michael Wayne Jackson. As a chopper surveilled the barn from above, SWAT members took positions around the perimeter. A sharpshooter provided cover fire, hoping to distract the gunman long enough for the tracker to escape through the front door. The tactic worked. Although the tracker had been inside for several hours following the single shotgun blast from the loft, he never saw nor heard the shooter after that. FBI Special Agent in Charge Hal Helterhoff was left with some tough decisions as he managed the standoff.
We didn't want to send in our troops if he had planned an ambush, if he had just shot as a decoy, if he was still in there alive and well, but still loaded with rounds of shotgun shells. We just didn't know what we had.
The barn's owner provided agents with a detailed sketch of the interior. The farmer explained that there was tractor storage and some stalls on the bottom floor, with a hayloft above. There was a window in the loft, but no other escape routes. No hidden trenches or trap doors through which the suspect might have slipped out.
This is all four here, and I got a whole bunch of hay over here.
Michael Wayne Jackson.
Agents attempted to make contact with the fugitive.
Come out, your hands on your head, and you will not be hurt.
They received no answer.
And after working so hard all those days, we didn't want to make an incorrect move and have one of our agents or officers or troopers injured at the last minute when it was unnecessary. So it was a very, very disciplined, well-organized effort.
The special agent in charge hoped tear gas would flush the shooter out. They fired non-flammable tear gas canisters into the loft. There was still no movement.
It's so dark, and we were trying to determine Should we have our tactical move, our assault? Should we wait till the next morning or wait till dawn where it's daylight? Again, we went 11 days. What's a few more hours when we know whoever's in there is trapped? And we had weather advisement that a violent storm was going to be moving in around midnight. So the state police and I decided, let's go now.
Equipped with night vision goggles, SWAT members navigated the dark, shadowy space. A pair of agents provided cover while their partners searched the lower level. They found no one on the first floor. They had no way to know if the killer was lying in wait, or if he was still there at all.
Hey guys, I got a body over here.
They had their answer soon enough. Lying amongst the hay bales, they found a man holding a shotgun who appeared to be Jackson.
Is it him?
He was dead, killed by the single shot he had fired hours earlier into his own head. Agents needed to confirm his identity.
They said, let's take his fingerprints, and we had an FBI agent, expert fingerprint examiner, on the scene with the known prints of Michael Wayne Jackson, and he took his fingerprints, and then we waited while he did his assessment, and finally he announced that it's definitely a match. It's Michael Wayne Jackson, and at that point we were all relieved.
They found no body armor on the killer. But as the FBI profiler had predicted, Michael Wayne Jackson chose to die rather than give himself up. 11 days after Michael Wayne Jackson killed his parole officer and began his crime spree, the town of Wright City, Missouri was able to feel safe again. It could have ended much worse, according to Missouri State Patrol Sergeant Don Bizzelli.
I was relieved for the people that no one else was going to get hurt. That was my main concern. No one else in that community would have to worry about Michael Wayne Jackson anymore.
Through the sacrifice of Thomas Gall, probation officers now have the option of carrying protective sidearms. FBI Special Agent Jack Osborne was close to Gall and his family and continues to mourn the loss.
As a law enforcement officer, I think a little bit of you dies when people close to you suffer. Tom was close to me personally. Tom was a friend. He was not only a friend to me personally, but he was a friend to our office. Our office knew him, and we worked very closely with him in the Federal Probation Parole Office.
For giving up his life in the line of duty, the Indianapolis U.S. Probation Office was renamed in Thomas Gall's memory. It enabled his friends and colleagues to express in a more permanent way Gall's significant contributions, his exemplary character, and the agency's deep and lasting affection for him. It was Mother's Day, May 13th, 1984, a warm spring afternoon near Tampa, Florida. After spending time with their moms, two boys raced off to fly parachutes made from plastic bags. It was the perfect way to spend a Sunday. But soon, the wind brought a foul smell. They went off to investigate and found a sight they would remember for the rest of their lives.
In 1984 in South Florida, a rapist and murderer was on the loose. The killer was a ruthless and terrifying predator, the newest member of an infamous group known as serial killers. He kills just for the sake of it. And though his acts at first seem random, his choice of victims is fiercely selective. A woman's occupation, or even her hairstyle, may be enough to make her a target. It takes time, at least 2 kills, before the pattern emerges. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former director of the FBI's New York office. The serial killer's world is a delicate balance. On one side is the threat of capture. On the other is his overwhelming need to publicize his crime. Our job is to use everything at our disposal to tip the balance in our favor.
What the boys found was the body of a nude woman lying in the roadside weeds. The medical examiner determined she'd been there for about 3 days. Her wrists were bound behind her back, and a rope with a trailing extension was tied around her neck like a leash. Bruises, blisters, and insects covered her body. But it was the position of the corpse that told detectives this was not a typical murder case. Major Gary Terry, then Lieutenant Terry, had just been appointed head of the Hillsborough County Major Crimes Unit when he got the call.
But the unique thing about the body to me was the fact that her legs were spread about 5 foot 1 inches apart from heel to heel. A scene that I'll never forget and a scene that I've never seen before.
The pose was so grotesque, the body seemed to have been positioned that way deliberately. Had the killer meant to shock whoever found it? Crime scene technicians photographed the body and measured its distance from the road. They carefully packaged what little evidence was left, some cloth tied in a knot. Detective Pops Baker of the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department also found tire tracks. He worked that night to make plaster casts. Tire casts can reveal the make and size of tires to help experts deduce the size and type of car a criminal is driving. They can also link him to a crime scene. Meanwhile, the body was brought to the medical examiner's office with the ligatures in place for him to study and photograph.
Is there any visible signs?
The medical examiner determined the victim had been raped, then strangled to death. The brutality of the crime brought a sense of urgency to the investigation. Fearing this would not be an isolated case, Lieutenant Terry immediately contacted the FBI's forensics lab in Washington, D.C. Terry had a detective hand-carry the evidence to the FBI lab. He had learned during an earlier case that doing so expedited the processing of evidence and brought the FBI in as an immediate active partner. The FBI lab is one of the foremost forensics laboratories in the country. There are experts on every type of evidence, from bullets to fibers to vehicle parts to knots. The FBI's knot expert analyzed the ligatures from the tamper victim's wrists and throat. They had been removed intact in hopes they'd tie the killer to his deed. They might also say something about his past. Specialized knots might reveal that he had been a merchant marine or in the military. But the ligatures turned out to be tied in granny knots, simple, functional knots that anyone might have tied. An FBI fiber expert analyzed the fabric found near the body. He brushed particles from the cloth onto a sterile sheet. What traces had the killer left behind? The analyst scanned the particles with a magnifier, but he didn't expect to find much. Such evidence is easily lost through weather or other contamination of the crime scene. In fact, the rule of thumb for fiber evidence is in 4 hours, 80% is lost. In 48 hours, it's 96%. After 3 days, the chance of finding anything is almost nil. So he was amazed when he found a small speck of red nylon fiber. It was trilobal, meaning it consisted of 3 lobes and had a lustrous or shiny coating. From its size, type, and shape, he guessed it was a carpet fiber, maybe from the killer's car. The fact that it was there at all was a minor miracle. The analyst from the FBI lab told the Hillsborough detectives to keep the discovery secret. If this were a serial killer, publicizing fiber evidence could make him change his pattern or his vehicle, so he'd be harder to find. The FBI's tire lab also scored. From the tire casts, they determined the tires were of 2 different brands. All were well worn and mounted reversed, with the black walls facing out. An irregularity like that could be powerful, incriminating evidence. Back in Tampa, police identified the victim from her fingerprints the day after her body was found. She was Lana Long, a 20-year-old Laotian woman, a popular exotic dancer in Tampa's red light district. Her boyfriend had recognized her from a newspaper photo and had called police. He became the prime suspect. Officers questioned the girls on the strip, but received no information implicating the boyfriend or anyone else. They were stumped.
Okay, I'll meet you up here at the tape.
Then, just 2 weeks later, the calm of another holiday weekend was broken. On Memorial Day Sunday, Detective Pops Baker and Lieutenant Gary Terry of the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office were called to a second murder scene, again in an isolated rural area off an interstate.
Young female, late 18, 19, 20 range.
Like Lana Long, this victim was female, in her late teens to early 20s, and nude. She was also bound at the hands and throat, and had a knot at her neck with a leash-like extension. But this knot was different. It was a hangman-style noose.
I can remember driving all the way to the crime scene and saying to myself, please don't let this victim be bound. In 1984, we very rarely had homicide victims bound. That's the first thing I asked the officer protecting the crime scene when I drove up. Is she bound? And he said, yes, sir, she is. So we've gone from very rarely having victims bound to 2 within 2 weeks. So we knew we had a problem.
This woman had not been dead long.
She's still warm.
Because the crime scene was fresher than the last, more evidence remained. Detectives found a man's olive green t-shirt and some strands of hair, which they determined were not the victim's. Hanging from a bush a few feet away from the woman's head were her white pantyhose and white jumpsuit, both covered with blood. From the brutality of her wounds, detectives knew she had fought for her life, and that it had been a savage struggle. She had been raped, strangled, beaten, and her throat had been cut almost from ear to ear. The medical examiner reported 3 causes of death: asphyxiation, head injuries, and a lacerated throat. As before, Baker found tire tracks. Casks were taken for analysis in comparison to the ones found at the first murder scene. Once again, the crime scene evidence was hand-delivered to the FBI lab in Washington. Analysts found the same red, lustered trilobal carpet fibers as at the first scene. And this time, there were red trilobal delustered fibers too, with the shiny coating absent. It said fiber evidence is the silent witness, but this match seemed to scream that the cases were linked. Lana Long's boyfriend could not be tied to the second murder, and he was cleared as a suspect. The items found at the scene also provided other clues. The green t-shirt was a size large, suggesting a person of medium build and chest size. The head hairs were medium brown, from a male Caucasian. These two pieces of information began a physical evidence profile, which are shared with other law enforcement agencies. FBI tire expert Sandy Worsema analyzed the tire impressions and made another match. The tracks were the same as those from the first murder scene. Now she knew the position of each tire on the car and that they were mounted on a mid-sized vehicle.
The advantage of having a cast over the photograph is that I can actually pick the cast up, I can light it from different angles and different directions, and hopefully if there are any cuts or nicks or rocks that are caught in the tire, I'll be able to see that in the cast.
But perhaps the best clue came from what she didn't know. She knew two of the tires with a common Goodyear Viva brand, but a third wasn't on the FBI's extensive reference list.
One of the tire impressions they could not identify from their files. But what they did was gave us the name of a tire expert, a manufacturer out in Akron, Ohio. And we actually flew a detective, Corporal Baker flew out there personally with the tire impressions, met with the old salts out there at the tire factory, and they actually were able to identify that tire for us, and that was the Vogue tire. And in 1984 was a handmade tire that comes as standard equipment on Cadillacs. We had never even seen a tire like that before.
Back here over to the left. Back here, is that the
Police were told that if they found the car with that tire, mounted black walls out, it would be as positive an ID as a fingerprint. Analysis of the victim's knife wound revealed that the killer had a knife with a 3-inch blade.
Now we've got two victims, both bound and both connected forensically. So we knew we had a serial killer on our hands at that time.
It's just a gut feeling that I got.
Lieutenant Terry began to track the killer's strikes on a map, hoping they'd reveal a pattern of behavior.
Dump the bodies on.
He put out the word to patrol officers. Look for a white male with brown hair of medium build, driving a mid-sized car with the tires reversed. He may be carrying a knife with a 3-inch blade. Following the FBI's recommendation, Terry didn't mention the fiber evidence or the ligatures. From a composite drawing released to the media, the second victim was identified. 22-year-old Michelle Sims had a criminal history of prostitution. She'd been reported missing the day before. A key member of the Hillsborough County investigative team was Detective Randy Latimer.
At this point, though, we realized we're dealing with a serial killer that it looked like he was probably preying on prostitutes. So we went out into the areas of the known prostitute areas and then started contacting the girls and let them know what was going on, giving them our business cards that if they saw something strange to contact us, let us know. We're looking for information. We were frustrated that we couldn't get any leads, we couldn't get anything to go on.
What we got? Well, I've got a body down here.
Then on June 24th, another Sunday, Terry, Baker, and Latimer responded to a third murder scene. A worker had found a body in an orange grove. It was another female, but the pattern seemed different. This one was fully clothed, and there were no ligatures, so there was no reason to believe it was linked.
Well, as you can see,
But detectives didn't rule it out.
looks like it's been undisturbed for quite some time.
They delivered the victim's clothing to the FBI lab, just in case a connection could be found. This time, the fiber expert they had worked with before was not available, and someone else was assigned. He wasn't asked to compare the new evidence to the old, so he didn't. Nor did he begin the analysis immediately. The body was so badly decomposed it only weighed 25 pounds, including clothes. It took some time to get an ID, and when it finally came, the victim's lifestyle didn't fit the pattern either. 22-year-old Elizabeth Ludenbach of Tampa was a shy assembly line worker who lived with her family. She had no criminal history and was not a prostitute, although she did frequent bars on Tampa's Strip. A note in Elizabeth's room said to find her boyfriend if anything happened to her. So detectives ordered a polygraph test.
I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and you just need to answer yes or no to those questions. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Did you know Elizabeth Ludenbach?
Yes.
Did you have a relationship with Elizabeth Ludenbach?
Yes.
Did you ever harm Elizabeth Ludenbach?
No.
He failed the polygraph test, making him the prime suspect. It wasn't until mid-September, 3 months after the discovery of Elizabeth's body in the orange grove, that the results came in.
Yeah?
The FBI had a match.
Yeah?
They found
That's
red carpet
fantastic.
fibers identical to those found in the first two murders.
Looks like Ludenbach is ours. They
Good.
found red fibers that connected up.
Now they had 3 related killings. Terry entered the new scene on the map.
Any kind of significant difference?
Every detective on the homicide squad was working the case. The nature of the investigation began to change. Instead of focusing on boyfriends and neighbors, detectives pursued an unknown killer terrorizing the women of Tampa.
We've taken the entire homicide unit now, are concentrating on these cases. And we're running down leads, we're getting telephone calls about different people, and we're checking those leads out. We're doing a background investigation of these particular victims, and we're coming up empty. And all we have to do is, unfortunately, wait, and then there's another victim that's discovered. And that is victim number 4.
After a lull of more than 3 months, the calm of yet another Sunday was shattered. On October 7th, a worker found a body near the entrance to the K-Bar Ranch in northern Hillsborough County. This time, Detective Steve Cribb was assigned to help process the scene. He, Terry, Baker, and Latimer didn't have to look far for the first grim piece of evidence: the victim's bra hanging from the entrance gate. The nude body of a young black woman was nearby. Her clothing was beside her. Most of the detectives ruled her out as a serial victim. She had been raped, but unlike the others, she had been shot, not strangled, and there were no ligatures. Also, she was African American, and usually serial killers don't cross racial boundaries.
get her into a controlled environment, we'd be able to really inspect.
While the FBI analyzed the evidence, detectives identified the victim from fingerprints. 18-year-old Chanel Devon Williams had just recently been released from jail on a prostitution arrest when she disappeared. She was last seen working the red light district along Nebraska Avenue with a friend, another prostitute, a few days before. She had been dead about 6 days. The FBI's hair and fiber analysis revealed it was the work of the serial killer. Both types of red fibers were found on Chanel's clothing, along with a brown Caucasian pubic hair. By crossing racial bounds and using a different weapon, the killer had changed his routine. Shifting from a pattern is very rare in serial killers and would make this one more difficult to capture. Chanel was added to the map near the Pasco-Hillsborough County line. With 4 dead, detectives were desperate to find the killer and obsessed with the case.
You don't work these cases. You live and breathe these types of cases. You go home at night, you dream about this case. You eat and sleep it. I would go home at night and just look at the telephone, waiting for it to ring. Every Sunday, for some reason, the first series of bodies were discovered on Sunday. On Sunday, I didn't plan anything. I sat at home.
Indeed, the Sunday after Chanel's body turned up, Terry, Baker, Latimer, and Cribb were called to another murder scene. This one was near Lake Thanodasassa, northeast of Tampa. A couple of amateur archaeologists had uncovered a morbid find. At the side of the road was a woman's body, wrapped in a gold-colored bedspread, tied with a blue jogging suit.
Thank you. We need that.
Inside, her lower legs and ankles were bound with common white string. Her hands were tied in front of her with a red bandana. She had been bound, raped, strangled, hit on the forehead, and dragged through the dirt. It seemed the killer was back to his old pattern. The woman was quickly identified from fingerprints as 28-year-old Karen Dinsfriend. Raised in an affluent suburban household, she had died a drug-ravaged prostitute. She was last seen alive in the early hours of the day she was killed. As if there weren't enough to link the killer to the crime, investigator Steve Cribb actually saw red trilobal carpet fibers on Karen's body. By now, he'd developed a sixth sense for them.
When you know what you're looking for, they almost look like glowworms on the victims. But for the average person to walk up and find them, even the other investigators who weren't looking for this type, they wouldn't see them. But they became such a key point of the investigation that when we went to a crime scene, that's one of the first things we would look for with the carpet fibers.
At the FBI lab, the fiber expert compared these fibers to the ones from the other crime scenes. They matched. There were now 5 cases linked to a single killer, but there was still no name, no face, and no one under arrest.
It becomes very frustrating that you know someone else is going to die because you haven't stopped the suspect. You have enough information to know that he's doing it, but not enough information to pick him out of the crowd if he were to bump into you walking down the mall.
Because you have to remember, in this series of cases, our concern is if we don't stop this guy, if we don't find him today, he's going to kill somebody tomorrow or the next day. And when in fact he did.
2 weeks later, on Halloween, another victim emerged. A contractor digging a ditch found the mummified remains of a woman's body. Terry, Baker, Latimer, and Cribb arrived at the scene. The medical examiner estimated the body had been there for about a month. The body was badly decomposed. An ID would require special measures. The FBI lab needed to soften the skin on the hands in order to get fingerprints. As hard as the victim was to identify, detectives instantly recognized the killer.
The body had been completely mummified. The head had been separated by animal activity. There were no ligatures attached, no clothing. And again, you just look at the body and you realize it's him again. You just have that feeling by now of the crime scenes, of seeing body after body after body, that it should be the same killer. And in fact, it was.
Then at 7:30 a.m., on Sunday, November 4th, a call came in to Tampa police that seemed unrelated. A man reported his daughter had been abducted and raped. 17-year-old Lisa McVeigh was leaving work at a Krispy Kreme donut shop on her bicycle. It was around 2:30 a.m. A man snatched her off her bike, threw her into his car, and drove off. He held her at gunpoint, reclined her seat so no one would see her, and told her to remove all of her clothes. He took her to his apartment, bound and gagged. She'd been sexually abused before, and she knew how to read the moods of an abuser. Lisa sensed resistance might send this man into a rage, so she quietly did what he wanted. Lisa memorized all she could about her surroundings. At first, she peeked out from beneath her blindfold. Then, when he uncovered her eyes, she saw everything, including his face. She was certain that now he'd never let her leave alive. He took her to his bedroom and repeatedly raped her for 24 hours. Sometimes he slept, but she knew he was armed and that he'd kill her if she tried to leave. After a full day of captivity, the man told Lisa to take a shower. Then he gave her some clothes and made her a sandwich. To her amazement, he said he would take her home. At around 3 a.m., they drove toward her neighborhood. On the way, he stopped at a 24-hour teller machine to withdraw money to get gas. Peeking under her blindfold, Lisa continued to memorize details. The Howard Johnsons, road signs, the word Magnum on the dashboard of his car. He finally released her near her home. After Lisa's adoptive father reported the abduction, she was interviewed by Tampa police officers.
I want to ask you everything that happened the night when you left work, and I'm going to record you.
They were amazed by her almost total recall and fierce resolve to catch the rapist.
Well, I always leave work about 12 o'clock. I got on my bike.
Although Lisa had not been killed, there were many similarities to the Hillsborough cases. The abduction, the rape, the man's build and hair color, and even the red interior of his car. Tampa police sent Lisa's sweater to the FBI lab.
We were inundating the FBI lab with things to compare for fiber samples. rape cases, assault cases, anything sexually related, any violent crime, we were sent to the FBI lab for a fiber comparison.
Meanwhile, just a week after the last body was found, Pasco County detectives were called to another murder scene. On November 6, 1984, a woman's body was found on the same road as the fourth victim, Chanel Williams. Only this time it was to the north, in neighboring Pasco County. Pasco detectives called Hillsborough detectives to a vacant lot near a mobile home park.
If you look right here,
The body was in a different county, but the ligatures and fibers were all too familiar. Although the body had decomposed to mainly bones, the telltale leash was still attached around the neck.
a little bit of shoelace right around
There was another ligature on an arm bone.
It's supposed to appear to be.
Near the body were the woman's tattered blouse and panties, and some jewelry.
Careful of that ligature around the neck. We're going to just leave that there.
The bones were scattered over almost an acre. When the medical examiner pieced them together, they seemed to belong to a young, white female. She was later identified as 18-year-old Virginia Johnson. Ginny divided her time between Connecticut and Florida, where she worked as a prostitute. She'd disappeared on her way to buy cigarettes about 3 weeks earlier. After all that time, it seemed impossible, but the FBI lab found a single red, lustrous fiber in Ginny Johnson's hair. Within the week, on November 12th, another jurisdiction fell prey to the killer. A body was found on an incline off North Orient Road within Tampa city limits. When Terry and Baker arrived, they found a young white woman, nude but for knee-high stockings. She was face down. When they turned her over, police knew from her bloodied face that she had been savagely beaten and that she had struggled. There were ligature marks on the front of her neck and on both wrists and arms, but no rope was found. Her wadded-up blue jeans and flowered top were near her body. Detectives Baker and Cribb immediately saw something stuck to the blue jeans, tiny red fibers. In the pocket of the jeans was the victim's driver's license. Kim Marie Swan was a 21-year-old part-time student who sidelined as an exotic dancer. She was last seen leaving a convenience store near her parents' home the previous afternoon. It seemed the killer had pulled off the road and thrown the body out of his car. There were faint tire impressions in the grass near the roadway. They would match the casts made earlier. The killer was picking up the pace of his killings, and the body count stood at 8. Terry and Baker were desperate. They drove to Atlanta to meet with a detective who helped crack the case of Wayne Williams, a serial killer believed to be responsible for 27 murders.
Because something we didn't really want to share publicly in 1984, what do you do when you're 10 bodies, 15, or 20 bodies down, and you don't have the suspect in custody? What do you do? We were sitting down in their office discovering, and during the course of that conversation, the telephone rang. And the telephone call was from the FBI in Washington. And the FBI lab says we had just had a match on a piece of fiber evidence submitted from a rape case.
And I was blindfolded.
That case turned out to be the
Later,
abduction
when we
and
woke
rape
up,
of
where
Lisa
was
McVeigh only a week earlier.
Well, when
Tampa
I
police had
came
rushed
to,
Lisa's clothing to the FBI lab, and experts there had found matching red trilobal carpet fibers on her sweater. It was the break they'd been waiting for.
I want to play it.
Terry flew back to Tampa immediately. He formed a task force of officers from the Hillsborough and Pasco County Sheriff's Office, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and the FBI, along with the Tampa police detectives already working the rape case. Then he divided them into teams, each with a different assignment. They initiated a massive manhunt. Patrol cars fanned out across North Tampa. They were looking for the killer's apartment and his red Dodge Magnum. The information from Lisa McVeigh was their roadmap. The additional personnel and resources brought in by the task force stepped up the search for Lisa McVeigh's abductor. Because the perpetrator used an ATM, one team of investigators subpoenaed the November 4th bank records for all local automatic teller machines. Another team subpoenaed a select list of all the Dodge Magnums in Hillsborough County, almost 500 cars. Then they compared the bank records and the list of Magnum owners, looking for a name that matched.
And the unique thing when you looked at both lists is that one name jumped out at you is Robert Joe Long. He had a money transaction from the money teller machine, early morning hours. He also was a registered owner of a Dodge Magnum.
In addition, earlier that day, a task force team from Tampa spotted a red Dodge Magnum on Nebraska Avenue, the killer's hunting ground. The detectives stopped the car. They told the driver they were looking for a robbery suspect. From his license, they identified him as Robert Joe Long. They photographed him and wrote up a field report. He was cooperative, but wouldn't let them search his car.
Of course, they contacted the task force headquarters when they made the stop, and we told them go ahead and stay with it at that particular time, stay with the car once it left, and we put a surveillance team together then to stay on him.
At that time, a photo pack was assembled, a lineup of photographs, in which he was placed in that photo pack. That photo pack was shown or displayed to Lisa. She looked at it and said, "That's the guy that kidnapped me." She pointed out Bobby Joe Long.
Lieutenant Terry had his man, but he couldn't risk making a mistake with a quick arrest. He needed time to obtain warrants and organize his team. To ensure public safety, Terry ordered non-stop surveillance of Long. Units followed Long's every move in unmarked cars. Maybe he sensed they were on his trail because he started cleaning house. Officers cleaned up right behind him. Even when he vacuumed his car, police seized the vacuum. They retrieved everything Long thought he was destroying. After months of tracking a phantom killer, the task force was not about to let him slip away. Less than 24 hours after Lisa McVeigh identified Bobby Joe Long, the arrest plan was firmly in place. The task force moved in. They had followed Long to a movie theater.
I'm right over here, Stewie.
As he watched the film, undercover detectives watched him. Long seemed unaware he was surrounded.
We're sitting at the war room we had constructed down at the operations center. We're heading, and everything is just going 90 miles an hour. We have a surveillance team on the inside of the theater watching it. There's a surveillance team outside watching the car. And that nagging doubt comes to you. Is this really the guy you've been chasing for 8 months? Is this really the guy that has been killing these women? So we tell the surveillance team outside, listen, whatever you do, get up to his car. I don't care if you have to low crawl, whatever you have to do, get to the car and tell us what kind of tires are on the car. And the surveillance team came back and said, hey, there's Goodyear Viva tires on the car. They're all Blackwall. And he said, there's some oddball tire here named Vig, Vogue, something like that on the car. As soon as he said that, we knew.
When we pulled up and saw the car, saw the tire, the Vogue tire that had been described from one of our tire impressions, when we saw the seat that revolved, that laid back, the red carpet fiber, there wasn't a doubt in our mind that we had the right suspect.
Terry gave the order to arrest. Detectives followed Long as he left the theater. He was never out of their sight. They didn't know if he was armed, so as he approached his car, they jumped him and brought him to the ground. He didn't resist.
He was on the ground when I walked up to him and placed my badge next to his face and identified myself as a deputy sheriff, advising him he was under arrest.
They took Long's car to the Hillsborough County Sheriff's office garage. Steve Cribb immediately tore out a piece of carpeting and rushed it to an FBI fiber expert flown in from Washington.
Statement from you?
All right.
Meanwhile, Randy Latimer and members of the task force interviewed Bobby Joe Long, who had declined his right to an attorney.
I arrested you out on the street that you got some cuts and stuff on your hands and arms. Did they take care of all that for you?
Oh, yeah, just a couple scrapes.
Okay. You thirsty?
They were well prepared, having consulted the behavioral science unit at the FBI Academy on how to conduct the interview.
Detective Price?
Just where do you want to start?
The game plan was to start by addressing only Lisa McVeigh. Long confessed immediately.
Well, I went down there and parked my car.
After he admitted to the rape and abduction of Lisa McVeigh, we talked about why he let her go and what went through his mind and what went on. I rolled into questioning him about prostitutes. Have you ever picked up any prostitutes? He told me he had in Miami. I asked him about here. And he said, well, he might have.
Then they began talking to him about the murders. He initially denied it, committing any of the murders.
As the interview continued, the FBI fiber expert examined the carpet from Long's car. He compared this sample to the others. It was the moment of truth.
As soon as they put them on the comparison microscope, the FBI agent called back and said, bingo, it's a match. The carpet fiber from the car matches the carpet fiber from the different homicide scenes.
It's probably helping me out at this point.
Excuse me.
Terry told Latimer the news. Then Latimer explained it to Long.
I mean, we just got information.
He told him about the fibers and their significance, and about Long's brown head hair found at the crime scene, and the Vogue tire. Latimer let Long know that by the time they found the second body, they were already on his trail.
What can I say?
The evidence was overwhelming.
And he looked down, he had his legs kind of, his knees spread apart, and he looked down between his feet, and I said, yeah, I did it. I said, did what? He says, I killed him. Killed who? He says, I killed all those girls in the paper I killed. And then we just started going through them one by one after that.
But then it just became more and more, you know.
Long described each murder in a taped confession. The interview lasted 5.5 hours.
Bobby Long showed no emotion, no remorse. It was just an everyday conversation like you and I are having here. At the end, I don't remember if it was myself or Bob Price that asked him why he did it. And he said that was his secret and he was going to take it to the grave with him.
During the interview, Long also confessed to a 9th murder.
Go right or you can go left. Go left.
When detectives found her remains, they also found more of the tiny red carpet fibers. The victim was identified through dental records as 21-year-old Vicki Elliott, a waitress. Long also helped identify his 6th victim, whose body had been found on Halloween. 22-year-old Kimberly Hops was known by the street name of Sugar. She was last seen by her boyfriend getting into a maroon Chrysler Cordoba, probably Long's red Dodge Magnum.
I'd like to thank the members of the press corps.
Late that night, Lieutenant Terry called a press conference.
The multi-agency task force has for months been investigating a probable serial killer
The media thought police would announce yet another body.
County, Pasco County.
They were shocked by the arrest.
How long did you have this suspect?
Bobby Joe Long, and he's presently been charged with 10 homicides that have occurred over the course of the past 6 months within Hillsborough County, Pasco County, and the city of Tampa. He was arrested without incident and has subsequently confessed to several of the homicides under investigation.
Do you have evidence for all the homicides?
Yes, we do.
Open 5.
In the coming days, Hillsborough detectives learned they weren't the only ones tracking Long. Task Force member Charles Troy, a Pasco County detective, stumbled upon the truth. He realized that Long fit the description of a man who had raped a Pasco woman months ago. Troy scoured Long's apartment for evidence. He found a photo album filled with photographs of nude women, including the rape victim. In jail, Long confessed and bragged about the crime. Detectives had also found clothing and jewelry from Long's other victims. It's a common quirk of serial killers to keep photos or other trophies of those they kill. Detectives soon realized that Long was the classified ad rapist, named for his M.O. He canvassed the classifieds for women selling beds and other furniture, and when they let him in, he brutally raped them. He had never been apprehended. Long may have raped more than 50 Florida women in the 1970s and 80s, some even during his murder spree. Now with Long finally in jail, detectives reflected on lessons learned.
It just shows the importance of physical and trace evidence, shows the importance of the cooperation with the laboratory and what they can do for you, and the effort that you have to put at a crime scene. The hours you need to spend there, you can't rush. You just have to be deliberate, take your time, and be professional in what you're doing. Because oftentimes the answer is sitting right there in front of you. And the smallest speck, the smallest little piece of information may be the one key that breaks this case.
As detectives got ready for the Thanksgiving weekend, they thought the horrifying 8-month string of killings was finally behind them. They packed up the boxes of evidence and hoped some semblance of normalcy would finally return. But even then, a quiet holiday seemed to evade them. On Thanksgiving Thursday, a couple out walking found a skull, bones, and some clothes, as well as 3 pieces of rope, including a leash-type ligature.
But what he really enjoyed was the pain, the torture, and the torment, and the control he exercised over these victims. You can see that in the early crime scenes with the leader, the leash-like attached to their neck, where he choked them out of consciousness. Then the victim wakes up, and he's still there astride her, raping her, torturing her. That's where Mr. Long got his enjoyment, his kicks. Killing, just eliminate a witness. He could do that without any compunction, without any trouble at all.
When a forensic dentist linked the body to a missing persons report, Long confessed. The victim was Artisan Wick, an 18-year-old bride-to-be who had vanished from a northeast Tampa street corner on March 28th. She had been missing for 8 months. Ironically, Wick was the first victim taken, though the last one found. She brought the known death toll to 10, but Terry has always believed there were more.
I'm confident he's killed other women, other people. Are we going to find those bodies or discover those other cases? I don't know that we ever will.
Bobby Joe Long was never convicted in the classified ad rapes, in part because the statute of limitations had expired by the time he was caught. He did receive 6 life sentences and 693 years for attacks on women in 1984 and 85. For the Hillsborough murders and the rape of Lisa McVeigh, Long received 33 life sentences. He was sentenced to death for the killings of Virginia Johnson and Michelle Sims. After sentencing, Long left the courthouse whistling a tune.
Mr. Long is a killing machine. He became very proficient at what he was doing, very skillful at it. And if Mr. Long ever sees the light of day, all you're going to have to do is follow the trail of his other bodies, of his other victims, because he will kill again. He enjoyed it.
Long remains on Florida's death row, with no date set for his execution. Southern Ohio's rural counties are perfect for outdoor recreation. But the calm of this quiet community was shattered in 1989 when a sniper gunned down an outdoorsman without reason. It was only the first in a string of random, terrifying murders. Hiding in the distance behind a high-powered rifle, a madman was hunting humans along Ohio's county roads.
Starting in the spring of 1989, a madman prowled the woods and fields of rural Ohio. He was a hunter. A high-powered rifle was his weapon of choice. Joggers and fishermen were his quarry. The hunter roamed far, struck at random, and left no clues. He was as elusive as he was lethal. Investigators knew he had to be stopped, but no one knew how. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former director of the FBI's New York office. Most murderers have a connection to their victims and a motive for their crime, but not a serial killer. His victims are randomly chosen to fulfill an uncontrollable need to kill. Often he leads an ordinary life, his family and friends unaware of his homicidal passions. But serial killers establish profiles, as distinct as fingerprints, and when a match is made, it is only a matter of time before they are caught.
The rural counties of southern Ohio are hilly, rocky, and wide open. A quiet place for coal miners, factory workers, and farmers. The kind of place where people leave doors unlocked and where violent crime is almost unheard of. On April 1st, 1989, 35-year-old Donald Welling did what he frequently did on Saturdays. He went jogging along the back roads of Tuscarawas County. His quiet morning run ended with a single shot. The rifle bullet ripped through Welling's heart, killing him instantly. Local authorities could find no motive and not a shred of evidence. The rifle was never found. November 10th, 1990, another Saturday morning, 19 months later. 21-year-old Jamie Paxton of Bannock, Ohio, rose early to go bow hunting. Leaving his crossbow in the car, he took a walk through the tall grass off State Route 9. Paxton was alone and unarmed. He didn't notice the red pickup truck that stopped a short distance away. The gunman was quiet and careful. Jamie Paxton was shot 3 times by a high-powered rifle. There were no witnesses. The killing horrified a quiet community that considered murder to be a problem for big cities. Hunting accidents are not uncommon in southern Ohio, but Belmont County Sheriff Tom McCourt knew right away that this wasn't a hunting accident.
When we saw more than one wound, we knew that it could not be an accident. That an accidental death, hunting accident, is called a one-shot. Plus, we saw it was a bullet wound instead of something from an arrow, and gun season was not in yet.
Sheriff Tom McCourt's jurisdiction is large geographically, but the community is closely knit. There, people work hard, and everyone seems to know everyone. McCourt even knew Jamie Paxton. What he didn't know was who killed him. The gunman had left no clues.
We checked the area for spent, empty cartridge cases, for tire tracks, for anything in that area of where we thought the shot came from. We also checked the area around the body looking for the spent projectiles that had passed through the body. We even took metal detectors in looking for the projectiles. At that time, we were unable to find anything. We're gonna run over there by the marina and see.
After interviewing Jamie Paxton's friends, family, and acquaintances, they were unable to find anyone with a motive to kill him.
Everyone in the area knew Jamie Paxton. No one that we knew of or was able, even to this day, have ever found anyone who disliked the young man.
Sheriff McCourt had an apparently random killing of a popular young man with no history of trouble.
They interviewed Fred and everything.
A seemingly unsolvable murder with no physical evidence and no witnesses. Not even a plausible theory about what happened.
I think that's about it.
After her son's death, Jean Paxton's grief impelled her to action. She began composing letters to a local paper, the Martins Ferry Times Leader, designed to draw out the killer.
There was just every time I would sit down to write a letter, I would say a prayer. And I would say, please God, just give me the words to get to the person that killed my son.
The letters were at once stern and passionate. To the murderer of my son Jamie, she wrote, would it be easier for you if I wrote words of hate? I can't because I don't feel hate. I feel deep sorrow at losing my son. You took a light from my life last November and left me with many days of darkness. Have you thought of your own death? It'll happen. Unless you confess your sin and ask for God's forgiveness, you will face the fire and fury of hell at your own death. If the killer were reading Jean Paxton's letters, he seemed unaffected by them. On November 28, 1990, just 18 days after Paxton's murder, 30-year-old Kevin Loring was on a hunting trip in Muskingum County, Ohio, some 40 miles from where Jamie Paxton was killed. While his friends finished eating lunch, Kevin decided to get a head start. Walking across a field in search of game, Loring himself became prey, unknowingly moving into the sights of the gunman. Loring was killed by a single gunshot wound to the head. The killer had taken care to commit his murders in different counties to slow an investigation that would have to take place over hundreds of rural miles. The result? Investigators in Muskingum County were unaware of the other sniper victims in nearby counties. They decided that Loring's death was probably a hunting accident. Jean Paxton never gave up. She kept writing throughout 1991, determined to draw out Jamie's killer.
And I always felt if I could get my letters into the hands of the person that killed my son, I felt that I could get a response from them.
She turned out to be right. I am the murderer of Jamie Paxton, the typewritten letter read. Jamie Paxton was a complete stranger to me. I never saw him before in my life, and he never said a word to me that Saturday. Paxton was killed because of an irresistible compulsion that has taken over my life. I knew when I left my house that day that someone would die by my hand. I just didn't know who or where. I'm an average-looking person with a family, a job, and home, just like yourself. Something in my head causes me to turn into a merciless killer with no conscience. The letter arrived at the Martins Ferry Times-Leader a few days before the one-year anniversary of Jamie's death. The letter described the Paxton murder in chilling detail. I was very drunk, and a voice in my head said, "Do it." I stopped my car behind Jamie's and got out. Jamie started walking very slowly down the hill toward the road. I raised my rifle to my shoulder and lined him up in the sights. I took at least 5 seconds to take careful aim. My first shot was off a little bit and hit him in the right chest. He groaned and went down. I wanted to make sure he was finished, so I fired a second shot aimed halfway between his hip and shoulder while he was prone on the ground. I jerked the shot and hit him in the knee. He never moved again. 5 minutes after I shot Paxton, I was drinking a beer and had blacked out all thoughts of what I had just done out of my mind. I thought no more of shooting Paxton than shooting a bottle at the dump. I know you hate my guts, and rightfully so. I think about Jamie every hour of the day, as I'm sure you do. For Sheriff McCourt, the letter was a beginning, evidence that might lead to a murderer. But he needed more. The typewriter used to write the letter, a gun. While investigators searched, the killer continued his own hunting. Saturday, March 14th, 1992. Claude Hawkins got off his midnight shift at the Pittsburgh Plate and Glass Company about sunup. It was a good time to fish, and Hawkins went straight to a favorite spot on the river below Wills Creek Dam. Hawkins had a wife and 4 children. Another outdoorsman had been killed while alone, but this one took place on federal property. The FBI stepped in. The FBI joined the hunt for the roadside sniper who just killed his latest victim on federal property. Investigators from the 3 counties involved, along with the FBI and the Ohio Division of Wildlife, formed a task force. It didn't take long to realize how few clues they had. In each case, the killer had no contact with the victim, no rifling of pockets, no robbery. Shell casings had been carefully removed, and the victims' cars were untouched. Special Agent Harry Trombitis was stationed at the FBI's Columbus, Ohio field office.
What we did know is that Mr. Hawkins died from a gunshot, and usually you would find some type of a shell casing in the area, and I remember looking very hard, metal detectors and hands and knees for any shell casings in that, and none were ever found. And so that was something that, you know, if in fact we had somebody who was evidence conscious enough to pick up the shell casing after they shot and killed somebody, we were dealing with a different brand of person here.
The multi-jurisdictional task force concluded that the death of Kevin Loring, first ruled accidental, was actually a homicide.
We got a problem.
Okay, what I got is,
Reviewing the 4 murders, the investigative team saw plenty in common. Outdoorsmen, hunters, fishermen, or joggers, alone in a rural setting, all shot with a high-powered rifle. All but one of the murders occurred on a weekend, and the killer was careful enough to leave no evidence. It was more clear than ever that a single individual was responsible. The task force was on the trail of a serial killer. As they began to mobilize, the killer struck again.
I know we can capture this person. I know we can.
10 days after the task force meeting on April 5, 1992, 44-year-old steelworker Gary Brett had left his home in neighboring West Virginia to go pond fishing in Noble County. Bradley's wife and 3 children would never see him alive again. The task force had another murder. The road sniper had to be stopped. The task force wanted to learn more about the personality of the sniper. They asked the FBI to draw up a psychological profile of the serial killer. Such an outline would be invaluable in tracking him down. Major Dane Shryock of the Coshocton County Sheriff's Office headed the task force.
Right after we had initially made an assessment that maybe these things might be linked, the Columbus FBI office set up a meeting to have the behavioral science unit come to Columbus, Ohio, and actually sit down and talk with the investigators of these 5 counties of the homicides.
The FBI's behavioral science unit in Quantico, Virginia, can accurately sketch personality profiles of individuals from sparse clues. Larry Ankrum is a member of the behavioral science unit assigned to the road sniper case. He studied all the available evidence, the investigative reports of the 5 murders, and especially the letter that the killer had written to Gene Paxton.
Then I came back to Quantico and reviewed these cases more in detail, and I came out with a formal profile. We were probably looking for a white male. We were looking for someone that was intelligent, someone who was an outdoorsman himself, someone that wouldn't look out of place in the woods, someone that was probably responding to some significant event in his life that was going wrong at that particular time. One of the things that was apparent that it was a sniper type mentality here that we were dealing with, someone that didn't want confrontation, someone that was doing things from afar, and this is something that we see many times with our arsonists. We ought to be looking at some different types of activities that he might be involved in, such as nuisance types of offenses, shooting out windows, shooting out tires of cars, cruelty to animals, arson fires.
Ankrum believed that the violence was triggered by stress and fueled by alcohol. The task force now had a psychological sketch of the roadside sniper. And they had his letter. FBI forensic scientists studied the letter intensely. They found distinguishing features in the typeface. If they could find the typewriter it was written on, it would be easy to link the confessional letter to the owner, and thus link the murder to the murderer. They had to hurry. The sniper was still out there. On July 21st, 1992, two hunters in a state park in Muskegon County came face to face with the killer. As they moved through the brush, one of them noticed something terrifying. A nearby figure with a gun pointed right at them. They called out to him, and the man scurried away to a red pickup truck. It happened too quickly for the hunters to get a good look at the man or the vehicle's tag numbers. Bewildered, they called local police, who alerted the task force. Throughout 1992, desperate to catch a man still ready to kill, the task force investigated and cleared more than 100 suspects. By August 1992, after 3 years, the investigation had hit a dead end. The task force was badly in need of information and decided to go public.
It is in the opinion of this multi-agency task force that these homicides...
They held a press conference and issued a press release detailing the FBI profile of the man they wanted and asking anyone with information to come forward.
The FBI made a press release, and it was done at one time to mass, and it got everybody, 6 o'clock news, I mean, everybody was showing this case. And the phone started ringing instantly.
Wilson.
One of those calls, received at task force headquarters on August 26, 1992, sparked a lead. The man on the phone was named Richard Fry. He said he thought the task force should know about a high school friend of his named Thomas Dillon.
D-I-L-L-O-N.
Investigators had a name and someone willing to talk. A task force member arranged to meet Richard Fry at a rest stop on Route 77.
Tom Dillon. I went to high school with him. We grew up together.
There, Fry talked about his old friend, Tom Dillon.
He was always a little strange.
They used to drive around rural Ohio, shooting at road signs and small animals. But Fry eventually found Dillon too eccentric and violent for his taste. Obsessed with serial killers like Ted Bundy, Dillon had taken to killing family pets and cattle and setting random fires. Fry got married and for most of the 1980s forgot about his strange friend. But in 1989, Fry ran into Thomas Dillon at a gun show in Cleveland.
Tom? Thomas.
Dillon invited him to ride along with him again, just like in the old days. Old friendships die hard, And Richard Fry again found himself driving the back roads of rural Ohio, drinking beer and shooting road signs. But Dillon had deteriorated, Fry discovered. Dillon asked whether Fry thought Dillon had ever killed anyone.
We've known each other for a long time.
20-some years, I guess.
Yeah. Do you think I could ever kill anybody?
Tom, you know, like you said, we go way back. I mean...
He discussed how to get away with random killings, including the tactic of killing in different counties to thwart investigators.
Kill them in separate counties, you know. They never connected. And being at random, they'd have no clues whatsoever.
Not average, your average guy.
Fry said that when he read the press release, he immediately thought of Tom Dillon.
Tell me what kind of vehicle he drives.
He gave a description of Dillon, including the vehicle he drove, a red pickup truck, just like the one spotted by the hunters.
Yes, as a matter of fact, it is.
Lieutenant Walt Wilson of the Tuscarawas County Sheriff's Office was a task force member. His job was to follow up on leads and tips, which were coming much more frequently as press coverage of the case increased. He decided Tom Dillon fit the FBI profile and needed to be investigated.
I began to follow up on the information that Mr. Fry had given us. I went to Tom Dillon's workplace in the city of Canton.
Dillon had been employed for a dozen years as a draftsman at the Canton, Ohio Waterworks. Wilson obtained Thomas Dillon's work schedule to compare Dillon's days off with the dates and times of the murders. The purpose was to eliminate Dillon as a suspect, but he couldn't. He found that Dillon didn't work weekends when most of the incidents occurred, but that didn't prove much. However, 2 weekdays Dillon took off from work caught Wilson's attention. July 21st, 1992, the day the hunters saw a man point a rifle at them, and November 28th, 1990, the day Kevin Loring was killed.
Please.
Dillon could be the one. As the other members of the task force followed up on hundreds of leads, Detective Wilson began surveillance on Thomas Dillon. Maybe Dillon would return to a crime scene or lead investigators to more clues. The surveillance began in October 1992. Detective Wilson followed Tom Dillon on his weekend excursions, driving the back roads of southern Ohio.
Typically, a day would start around 7 in the morning on Tom's days off, the weekends usually, and he would leave his home, and sometimes he would stop at a convenience store and buy some beer, and then he would go south of his home into other counties, just driving all the back remote roadways.
On October 10th, 1992, while tailing Dillon, Wilson briefly lost track of the suspect's vehicle. As Wilson crept around a corner, he came face to face with Thomas Dillon. His cover possibly blown, his case in jeopardy, Wilson had to think fast.
I waved at him and he waved at me, and we kept on going. He stopped at the end of the drive to see if I was going to stay there or not.
Wilson couldn't risk being identified. He let Dillon drive away.
My big concern was I hope he doesn't stop and ask me what I'm doing on that property, because I had all of my gear laying in the car with me, and I didn't want him to see my radios and my gear that I had with me.
A few days later, Larry Oler of Barnhill, Ohio, was hunting about 150 yards off a road in Tuscarawas County. He heard a car stop. Through the trees, he saw a stocky white male. The man lifted a rifle. Oler was unhurt and watched in terror as the truck sped away.
Although Older's description of his assailant resembled Dillon, he was unable to make a positive identification. The task force realized that Thomas Dillon was their most likely suspect. Surveillance of him would have to be beefed up. Throughout October and November of 1992, the FBI coordinated a massive air and ground surveillance. Dillon was observed shooting road signs and busting car windows with rocks, exactly the sort of petty vandalism outlined in the FBI profile. But if they arrested Dillon for vandalism, they might never gather enough evidence to arrest him for the murders. It is difficult to tail someone on an empty rural road in broad daylight. The stakes were high. If Dillon tried another shooting and the FBI weren't in the right spot, they could have another murder. If they crowded Dillon too much, they might be found out and Dillon would slip into hiding. The ground surveillance had to be well off of Dillon. Agent Trumbitis and Captain Shryock relied on the air surveillance as their eyes and ears. They would move in if something happened. One day, the surveillance team faced its worst fear. Trumbitis and Shryock were far behind Dillon when the air surveillance called out an alert. Up ahead of Dillon, on the road, was the classic profile of a road sniper victim. A jogger, female this time, alone, in a rural setting. If Thomas Dillon were indeed the gunman, this jogger may be irresistible bait. Trumbitis and Shryock got nervous. Hoping for the best, they sped forward. Dillon continued too, right toward the jogger. Driving at top speed, Trumbitis and Shryock frantically called to the agents in the plane. Where is he? Is he stopping? The airplane reported back. Dillon is approaching her. There is no one nearby. The agent's car hurtled forward. A call from the air. Dillon is pulling up alongside the jogger. The agents held their breath. He passed her without incident. The feeling of relief lasted only moments. The airplane radioed that Dillon had taken a right turn onto a smaller road. The aerial unit stayed on him, instructing Trumbitis and Shryock where to turn. Then a second right turn. Could he be circling back? They called to the airplane, is the jogger still there? Dillon continued to make right turns until he was back on the road the jogger had been on. His U-turn justified the agent's fear. He was going back for her. Where is the jogger? Trumbitis yelled into his radio. Cannot see the jogger, came the reply. But the agents knew she had to be somewhere ahead of Dillon. If he came upon her again, they were sure he would kill her. The air unit called in that Dillon had stopped his truck and had gotten out. He had something shiny in his hands. Would he kill her right under their noses? The jogger couldn't be seen from the air, but that didn't mean she wasn't there. The agents in the car heard shots and feared that Dillon had struck again while under their surveillance. But the airplane radioed that Dillon was shooting a stop sign. The jogger had turned off the road. She was safe, unaware of her close encounter with Thomas Dillon.
I think so.
The cat and mouse game with Thomas Dillon began to wear on the task force members.
I figure if we have 5 rounds here.
A lot of pressure. I mean, you're wondering whether this guy today is going to go out and kill somebody and you aren't going to be able to stop it. And you know that he's probably the one that is responsible for killing other people. You're working 14, 16 hours a day. You're living out of a car. You're drinking coffee like policemen, you know, and you aren't eating right. And the stress is tremendous.
But the net continued to tighten around the suspect. The murderer, in his letter to the newspaper, had admitted being bothered by the Paxton murder and visiting his grave. Investigators returned to video footage of Jamie Paxton's grave recorded November 10, 1991, the first anniversary of Jamie's murder. Many people paid their respects that day, but curiosity rather than respect was the agenda of one visitor photographed, Thomas Dillon. Investigators immediately recognized the man they had been tailing. Surely he was the sniper, but to earn a conviction they needed direct, incriminating evidence. After the second anniversary of Jamie Paxton's death in 1992, surveillance observed Dillon entering the Times Leader building. He bought a copy of the previous day's paper, full of the details of the Paxton Memorial Service. The FBI had good circumstantial evidence on Thomas Dillon, but they still lacked physical evidence, a bullet, a gun, or a typewriter to link him with just one of the victims. Hunting season was fast approaching. Dillon was still out roaming the rural roads, drunk, armed, deadly. The communities of southern Ohio had been terrorized for 3 years. The people feared going outside, but tried to live normal lives. Dillon had to be taken off the streets. The task force knew Dillon had been in trouble in the past for illegally owning a silencer and was forbidden to possess firearms, a stipulation he clearly violated during his vandalism sprees. The task force had little choice. Before he could kill again, they would arrest Thomas Dillon. But the plan wasn't just to arrest him on a weapons violation, but to convince him he was caught red-handed and get him to confess to murder. Lacking ballistic evidence and holding only a relatively minor weapons charge on Dillon, the FBI badly needed to elicit a confession. Trumbitis had a plan.
Since we knew what his routine was through the surveillances and that, where he left his residence and he would go to this dairy mart every day before he left and went on his 300-400 mile drives, we would try to make the approach at the dairy mart. And what we had was an office building right across from the dairy mart where we occupied. We took over the basement of that building. Detective Wilson and I did was we went down into the basement where we were going to conduct the interview, and we put up along the walls of the whole room maps of the areas that he drove in, crime scene photographs, newspaper articles. We wanted to make that setting just irresistible to him.
Then we're just going to, piece by piece, start laying this out in front of him and see what kind of reaction we get from him.
It would be overwhelming, and you know, it would put him in the best frame of mind for us to be able to sit down and interview him and get a confession.
Mr. Dillon.
On November 27, 1992, the plan went into effect. Their entire case so far rested on getting a confession.
The idea was for when he came out of the dairy mart, we were going to approach him, identify ourselves, and basically request that he follow us voluntarily over to this room where we wanted to share some information with him and show him some things that we knew that would interest him.
If Dillon refused, Trumbitis would raise his right hand to signal ATF agents who are responsible for making arrests in weapons cases to cuff Dillon.
And I can just remember his reaction. I mean, his jaw just for about 5 seconds, and then he composed himself and he said, "I want to talk to my attorney first."
That was the cue. Trumbitis gave the signal and the ATF agents stepped in and arrested Thomas Dillon. Dillon didn't realize it, but it was a bitter defeat for the FBI. Trumbitis thought he'd blown it, despite all the evidence he'd gathered. Despite his certainty that they had the road sniper, he feared that he would see a 5-time murderer quickly released on a minor weapons charge. At the very time of Dillon's arrest, other task force members were executing a search warrant on Dillon's house. Finally, the FBI felt they would come away with the physical evidence desperately needed to link him, once and for all, to the murders. But they didn't. To their surprise, the search turned up nothing more incriminating than some area maps marked with arson and vandalism sites. Dillon was refusing to talk. They were holding him, but there was nothing they could do with him.
It was pretty much over when he said he wanted to talk to his attorney. So we went back to the restaurant and we were going to have a cup of coffee, and all of a sudden we got the word that he wanted to talk to us. And so Walt and I jumped into our car and we made a beeline to Stark County Jail.
Trombitis and Wilson confronted Dillon with one piece of evidence after another. Photographs, videotapes, newspaper clippings showing his link to the murders.
I would pull out one piece at a time and show him, and just as we had suspected, he just was keenly interested in the information that we had, the surveillance pictures, the crime scene photos, you know, just the animal, you know, the shots of the animals that we had along the roadways and that. You could just see that he was just fascinated by that.
Fascinated but not talkative, Dillon said it would serve no purpose to admit anything now. Another dead end for the FBI. Dillon's attorney is arguing that he should be spared jail time on the weapons charge. Now, unless something turned up on him very quickly, Thomas Dillon would have to be released.
Thank the various representatives of the media for showing up today.
The task force was now fighting the clock. Desperate for physical evidence, they held another press conference, appealing to the public for any information about guns they may have bought or sold with Thomas Dillon.
Haven't had any contact with Mr. Dillon.
Meanwhile, task force member Jerry Wade of the Ohio Division of Wildlife was following up on a tip. A witness steered Wade to a spot where he had seen Thomas Dillon firing his rifle a couple of years back. Wade hoped that would lead him to some ballistic evidence to link Dillon to one of the killings.
This individual that brought it to our attention that he'd seen Thomas Lee Dillon shoot this deer with a rifle, thought the rifle might be one of them that was used. And if we could locate some physical evidence, the shell casings per se, and if we could get those and match them to the murder weapon, we could put that rifle in Thomas Lee Dillon's hand prior to the murders, which would really give us a lot stronger case as far as him possessing the rifle prior to the murders.
The chances of finding the small shells in such a wide area were slim, and it had been 2 years since the rifle had been fired there. Determined, Wade patiently combed inch by inch through a grassy field where the anonymous witness said he saw Dillon shoot the deer. Beginning at the tree described by the witness, Wade searched the area in a circular pattern by hand and with a metal detector, carefully marking off the territory. Miraculously, Wade hit the jackpot. He found 2 rifle shell casings, later identified as coming from the same gun that killed Gary Bradley and Claude Hawkins. Finally, a physical link to the murders.
I felt like celebrating. It was just unbelievable that I found them, because after the time, the length of time that had been since the shooting and the incident, and the individual wasn't sure the location of the tree exactly. The scene had changed since he had been there. They had removed a fence row and pushed out the area. So I felt very, very much fortunate to find him, and I felt like a celebration at the time. It was just like, you know, it was a gift handed to you.
Meanwhile, the publicity from the press conference asking the public for help was about to bear fruit. On December 4th, Captain Shryock was manning the phones at Task Force headquarters. A man named Al Cope was on the phone.
Can you give me that?
He said he bought a weapon from someone who may have been Thomas Dillon at a gun show the previous spring.
I'll tell you what, if you give me about 15 minutes, sir, I'll be right there.
The date? April 5th, the same day Gary Bradley was murdered. The rifle was sent to the FBI laboratory in Washington for ballistics testing. Special Agent Paul Schrecker is a ballistics expert for the FBI.
As the bullet passes down the barrel of the weapon, that bullet, by coming in direct contact with the interior of the barrel of the weapon, picks up the microscopic imperfections, the microscopic features of that barrel. So that bullet is marked with the fingerprint of that barrel.
Fragments of bullets taken from the bodies of victims Claude Hawkins and Gary Bradley were examined at FBI labs.
A bullet fragment may still be of value for comparison. Even though a bullet may fragment, may break up as a result of striking a victim, and maybe only fragments are ever recovered, those fragments are still marked. They still bear the impressions of the inside of the barrel of the weapon. And those fragments can still be used to make a positive association or an identification. When the weapon was submitted to our laboratory, the weapon was test fired, and the test fired bullets from this weapon were then compared to the bullet fragments taken from the victims.
Al Cope's gun was test fired, and the bullets examined for characteristics they may have in common with the bullet fragments taken from Gary Bradley and Claude Hawkins. The conclusion? Al Cope's gun, sold to him by Thomas Dillon, matched the gun used to kill both Gary Bradley and Claude Hawkins. The FBI finally had the goods on Thomas Dillon.
Close the door, please.
Agent Trombitis visited Dillon in jail and confronted him with the evidence. He and his truck fit the descriptions of the few witnesses. He had been off work when each murder had occurred. He had a history of random violence and gunplay. And the FBI could prove in court that a gun he once owned killed at least 2 of the victims.
What kind of proof?
What kind of proof? All the proof we need.
But Trombitis knew Dillon was guilty of all 5 murders, and he wanted closure for the victims' families. He offered Dillon a deal. As leverage, Trombitis reminded Dillon that he faced Ohio's electric chair. Dillon got nervous, and he began to negotiate.
And what's your assessment of the situation?
I still can't believe you got that hard evidence.
Well, we have evidence.
Thomas Dillon met with the prosecutors in June of 1993. He agreed to admit to 5 killings if the death penalty were dropped as a possible sentence.
Terms, 1 each for each of the acts committed.
On July 9th, Dillon confessed to prosecutors in order to save his life. On July 12, 1993, a smirking Thomas Dillon walked into the Noble County Courthouse to make his plea.
Mr. Dillon, at this time, how do you plead to count 1 in the indictment in case number 93 CR4 involving the death of the aggravated murder charge involving the death of Gary Bradley? How do you plead?
Guilty.
With the families of the victims watching, Dillon confessed to murdering Donald Welling, Kevin Loring, Claude Hawkins, Gary Bradley, and Jamie Paxton. He was still smirking and unrepentant as he left court.
At this time of the indictment in case number 93 CR4. Guilty.
Hello? Tom.
This is Thomas. Yeah.
Dillon's incredibly cavalier attitude was detailed by a local reporter whom Dillon repeatedly called from prison,
Can't get enough of me.
marveling at his own violence, reveling in his celebrity, and laughing off the murders.
Let's talk about the other guys. I mean, they
Except
were
one.
really good shit.
He would not discuss the murder of Jamie Paxton.
No, forget it, all right? Just forget it.
Jean Paxton, Jamie's mother, was in court the day Dillon pleaded guilty.
I just want to talk to him about Jamie, the kind of person Jamie was. Jamie was everything Thomas Dillon could never be. Dillon is a coward, he hid behind a gun, and Jamie was not that way.
Little did I know that on the evening news he was watching that, and it made him very angry that I had called him a pathetic coward.
We talked to him about remorse and how did you feel after these homicides, and the only one that he said that it really bothered him about was Jamie Paxton. He said, "I didn't realize the kid was so young."
Jean Paxton had looked forward to confronting Dillon in court, but his guilty plea cost her that opportunity. She asked Sheriff McCourt to arrange a conversation. McCourt agreed. That evening, Jean Paxton's phone rang. She found herself speaking with the murderer of her son.
When I picked up the phone that evening, it was just like somebody calling up to sell me something. He said, "Mrs. Paxton, this is Tom Dillon." It was just almost more than I could comprehend. The tone of his voice, the way he came across. Still, the arrogance was there.
You really hurt my feelings this afternoon when...
Dillon told Jean Paxton that when she called him a coward, she had hurt his feelings.
I really don't think he expected to get what he got from me. I think that Thomas Dillon could have handled the crying, the screaming, the saying of calling names, the cursing. I think he could handle that, but I did not lower myself to that level. I talked to him as a mother, and I really feel that through this whole thing, that is what got to Thomas Dillon.
Well, I understand.
After 3 years, Jean Paxton felt vindicated.
I felt really good. I walked out on my front porch, and I just felt like for the first time in 3 years that I was free. I was free of Thomas Dillon. I felt that I had defeated him by words, and I did it all for Jamie.
Thomas Dillon made it clear he did not want to go to Lucasville Prison, the toughest in Ohio. So Jean Paxton saw to it, with a petition drive, that was exactly where Dillon was sent. In August 1993, Jean Paxton won a $25 million wrongful death judgment against any future money Dillon might make. Dillon's wife had been trying to sell his story to Hollywood. Paxton and State Senator Bob Nye passed the Paxton Bill, barring killers or their relatives from profiting from the crime. Thomas Dillon remains in Lucasville Prison. He is eligible for parole in 165 years.